The road was empty that night, stretching endlessly beneath a pale moon, the fog curling along the edges like smoke from a dying fire. I remember gripping the steering wheel, my hands trembling slightly in the chill, listening to the static hum of the radio and the soft rustling of trees that leaned too close, their branches scraping like fingernails across glass. Somewhere ahead, a light flickered, just for a moment, before vanishing into the darkness, leaving only the scent of wet earth and the taste of iron in the air. I passed an old farm, shuttered and hollow, where the wind whispered through broken windows as if something inside was breathing. Every mile felt heavier, as though the road itself wanted me to stop. And then out of nowhere I saw it, a shadow that didn't belong, standing too still at the side of the highway. My heart slowed as I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the fog. But the moment I blinked, it had moved. That's when I realized I wasn't alone. The night had already swallowed the road. Autumn air pressed cold against the glass. Leaves whispered in shallow gusts, brushing the tires. I drove alone. The headlights barely cut through the dark. Then I noticed it, a fog, pale and curling, threading itself along the asphalt. It didn't behave like fog I'd seen before. It lingered, as if hesitant to let me pass. It wound around my car like fingers. Slow, deliberate. Each time I blinked, it seemed closer. I tried to ignore it. The hum started then, not loud, barely there. A vibration beneath my feet, through the pedals. The fog thickened, coiling in shapes I couldn't name. Shadows moved inside it. I looked directly. They were gone. Only the mist remained, pale and breathing. The road shifted. A bend I remembered was gone. The trees leaned in ways that made my eyes hurt. I slowed. The hum persisted, like a lullaby whispered beneath the wind. It tugged at the back of my mind. I felt watched. The shadows returned when I looked away, stretching longer, flickering at the edge of the headlights. My hands tightened on the wheel. Cold sweat traced down my neck. Every curve of the road now seemed wrong, unfamiliar. I thought about stopping, pulling over. But even parked, the fog clung. It pressed against the windows, breathing, a soft rustling from the trees. Then, from nowhere, steps? Footsteps echoing in wet earth. Yet I was the only one there. I tried to tell myself it was the wind. It wasn't. The hum rose a little, insistent, almost impatient. I smelled damp leaves, decaying. Mixed with something metallic, faint, like blood, I swallowed hard. My own breath sounded loud in the silence. The shadows lengthened, slithering along the white lines. I couldn't follow them with my eyes for long. Whenever I tried, they folded back into the fog, hiding. Time felt fractured. Minutes stretched like taffy. The familiar bends of the road felt foreign. I could not place where I had come from. I blinked. A figure, pale and still, stood on the side of the road. Its shape blurred, wavering, gone when I looked closer. The fog thickened again, pressing against the doors. I heard a whisper of movement inside the mist. Saw footsteps circling the car. I parked finally. Engines off, hood warm under my palms. Still, I could feel it. Eyes, weightless, unseen, watching. The hum continued. I did not move. I did not breathe. The fog seeped closer. It tasted like iron. The night seemed to lean in, quiet, waiting. I wanted to leave, but the road had disappeared, and I wasn't sure I had ever arrived. Only the hum, only the fog, and the soft, patient brush of something unseen against the back of my neck. The road ended at a field. Tall grass swayed, pale under the moonlight. Autumn's chill seeped through the cracks of the car doors. I stepped out. The air was still, no wind. Yet the grass whispered, soft, deliberate rustling, rising and falling like quiet breathing. I froze. Every sense sharpened. Nothing moved. And yet I felt eyes counting me, following. A shape emerged at the edge of sight, pale, almost transparent. Then gone when I looked straight at it. The field stretched wider than I remembered. Rows of forgotten crops, empty barns hunched in shadow. Silence hung heavy, pressed against my ears. Rustling again, closer this time. Not the grass this time. Steps, soft, deliberate, brushing against the earth. I held my breath. Smell of damp soil mixed with faint metallic tang. Something moved inside the field, invisible yet present, a faint shimmer at the edge of the moonlight. A figure, slender, pale, too still. It vanished when I tried to focus. The night felt alive, not welcoming, watching, patient. I walked a few steps, toes brushing against brittle stalks. The rustling followed, echoing my pace. A hum under the air, low, constant. Shadows stretched into corners of the field. I could not tell where one ended and another began. Every blade of grass seemed a finger, pointing, shifting, leaning toward me. I wanted to speak, but my voice felt too loud, too sharp in the quiet. The pale figure returned, this time just beyond the field's edge. So close I thought I could see its eyes, but they were hollow, empty, gone in the blink of a second. The earth beneath me trembled lightly. Or maybe it was my pulse. The hum deepened. I felt it in my chest. I stepped back. The field seemed endless. Barns collapsed into darkness. Paths I hadn't seen before wound into shadow. I smelled hay, wet and rotting, undercut by the damp decay of soil. It clung to my clothes, clung to the air. The rustling continued. Every direction, every heartbeat matched its rhythm. I realized I could not tell if I was moving toward it or if it was moving toward me. The figure appeared one last time. A fleeting glimpse, a band of light on pale skin. It vanished before I could think. I leaned on the car. The metal was cold, unyielding. Breath slow, eyes scanning. Every shadow alive. The field stretched, watching, waiting. No wind, no footsteps. Yet I was not alone. I got back in the car. Locked the doors. The hum lingered. Rustling whispered just outside. I could feel it still. Eyes on my back. Watching. Patient. And when I drove away, the field remained. Silent. Empty. Yet alive. The road stretched empty. Night thickened over asphalt, soft and black. Autumn air pressed cold against the car, leaving frost on my sleeves. I passed an abandoned stretch, fields on either side fading into shadow. The radio clicked. Static. At first, nothing but a hiss. Then, whispers. Names, numbers. Voices I didn't recognize. I turned the dial. Static clung, persistent, curling around the speakers, almost forming words. The hum of the engine faded into the background. Only the whispers remained. Faint, close, urgent. A street light flickered ahead. Its pale light trembled, pulsing over the road. Shadows twisted under it. The asphalt seemed alive. I tried to tell myself it was imagination. But the names kept coming. Soft, deliberate, repeating. My hands gripped the wheel tighter. Cold sweat ran along my spine. The smell of wet asphalt mixed with something metallic. The radio crackled louder. It wasn't just static anymore. I thought I heard my own name. Then a string of numbers. I couldn't place them. Couldn't escape them. The streetlight flickered again. A shadow shifted beneath it, too fast. Gone when I blinked. I breathed slowly. Tried to steady myself. But the whispers pressed closer, brushing my mind like soft fingertips. I realized I was remembered. By something unseen. Watching. Patient. The road twisted in ways I didn't recall. The hum from the engine became distant. All I could hear was the static and the murmurs. I caught a flash of movement in the rearview mirror. Nothing. Empty. Yet a feeling of weight lingered behind me. The static reached a low, vibrating tone. Almost a voice, calling, familiar, but wrong. I turned the volume down. Still the whispers seeped through. Names I didn't know, numbers I couldn't remember. And a silence after, heavy and watching. The streetlight above me went out. Darkness settled over the road. The hum, the whispers, the faint metallic scent. Everything lingered. I drove on. Eyes on the rear view. Every shadow felt like it moved with me. The radio finally went quiet. But I knew. It had remembered me. And I would not be forgotten. The neon sign flickered weakly, buzzing in the night air. I had expected warmth, light, the smell of coffee and fried food. Instead, silence. The lot was empty. Engines cold. Tires pressed into cracked asphalt, still and forgotten. I stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of old coffee, bitter and cold. Plastic cups sat abandoned on tables, rims dusted with grime. A creak echoed down the empty aisles. Wood bending under no weight. I held my breath. Nothing moved. Nothing visible. Yet I felt it. A presence shifting just behind me. I turned slowly. Empty. The shadow of a chair stretched across the floor. A table groaned as though someone had just sat. Footsteps whispered at the edge of hearing. Soft, deliberate. Following me through the aisles. The flickering lights painted the walls in pale, uneven colors. Coffee stains on counters glimmered in the weak glow. I reached for the handle of a door, cold metal pressing against my palm. The air smelled faintly of burnt sugar, of fried oil left too long. I swallowed. My own heartbeat was loud, echoing against the empty walls. I moved slowly, careful not to startle. What? I didn't know. Cans lined the shelves, still and dusty. A clock ticked, though the hands barely moved. I felt eyes, weightless, tracing my steps. Not human. Not kind, just watching. The distant creaking continued. Sometimes a soft thump followed. Sometimes nothing. I couldn't tell if it was real or imagined. I walked past tables with half-full cups. Steam long gone, leaving the air stale and cold. The tiles beneath my shoes were cracked, echoing every step. A shadow flickered at the edge of the fluorescent glow. Gone when I turned. I realized I wasn't alone, but there was no one to see. I pressed my hand to the counter, cold, unmoving. I felt the tremor of the building settle around me. Or perhaps I trembled. A soft hum rose somewhere in the distance. Not mechanical, not entirely natural. It threaded through the aisles, weaving between the shelves. I felt compelled to move, to leave. But the exit seemed farther than it should. Hallways stretched, bending in ways they hadn't from outside. Footsteps again, closer, deliberate. I could feel their rhythm against my spine, behind my own. I paused, breath shallow. The air smelled faintly metallic, like old coins or dry blood. The hum faded. The creak faded. Only the echo of my own steps remained. I stepped back into the neon light of the parking lot. Doors locked themselves behind me with a soft click. The building seemed to sigh, settling into silence. I left the lot slowly, tires crunching on the gravel. The neon buzzed, flickered, then went still. And I knew the emptiness had not ended. It had followed. The road narrowed. Fog pressed low along the edges, curling over the ditches. Night smelled damp like wet earth and rotting leaves. Something caught my eye, a glint of silver in the shadows. I slowed. A mirror lay in the roadside ditch. Cracked, edges jagged, half buried in mud. The glass reflected pale light from the headlights. I leaned closer. The air smelled faintly metallic, like iron. A chill pressed against my spine. I saw my reflection, or I thought I did. It moved with me, but something else shifted behind me. A shadow. Slender, indistinct, flickering at the edge of the glass. I spun around. The ditch was empty. No footsteps. No shapes. The mirror trembled slightly in the mud. A crack ran from top to bottom, jagged like a lightning bolt frozen in place. And in that crack, the shadow stretched. I tried to look away, but curiosity held me. The reflection didn't just mimic me, it remembered me. The air was cold, tasting faintly of dust and rain. I could hear leaves rustling somewhere, though the wind had stopped. The shadow moved closer in the glass, slower now, deliberate. I stepped back. The ditch felt impossibly deep, sucking light into itself. Every instinct told me to leave. Yet I stayed. The glass shimmered, almost breathing. The shadow paused, watching. I could not tell if it knew me or something else entirely. I touched the frame. Cold, wet, sharp against my fingers. The mirror vibrated faintly, as if alive. The road behind me remained empty. No footsteps. No whispers. Only the soft hum of the fog pressing against my ears. The shadow in the glass lingered, moving independent of me now. I blinked. Gone. Or had it just merged with my reflection? I stepped away from the ditch. The night seemed to lean closer, heavier. The fog wrapped around the car, around me. I looked once more. The mirror lay still, cracked, silent. No reflection moved. No shadow waited, and yet I knew. Something had remembered me there. Watching. Patient. I drove on slowly, headlights cutting into the fog. The mirror disappeared into the ditch. But the feeling remained. Eyes in the glass, unseen, waiting. The country road stretched under a pale moon. Fog hung low, pressing against the edges of the trees. The air smelled damp like earth after rain. I drove slowly. The tires hummed on cracked asphalt. Every shadow felt closer than it should. Then I saw the light. A warm glow, steady, almost beckoning. A figure stood in the middle of the road. It held a lantern. The glass flickered softly, casting pale light across the fog. I could not see a face. It was hidden, always hidden. I slowed further. The engine hummed beneath me, tense, quiet. The figure did not move, yet the light shifted, illuminating the mist like fingers brushing through air. I blinked. When I looked again, it had vanished. No footsteps. No rustling. Only the lantern's glow remained, floating in the fog. I followed it. The road twisted in ways unfamiliar. Trees leaned close, shadows curling over the asphalt. The light guided me, patient, silent. The hum of the engine was distant now. Only the soft pulse of the lantern, warm and steady, filled the night. I felt my breath in the cold air, shallow, echoing. The path curved sharply. I saw glimpses of the world through the fog, fields, hedgerows, fence posts. All familiar, yet wrong. Twisted in angles I did not remember. The lantern swayed slightly. Not from wind, there was none. It hovered, almost breathing, a soft pulse of pale yellow against the gray. I wanted to call out, but the sound of my voice felt too loud, too heavy in the silence. I kept my eyes on the glow. The air smelled faintly of smoke and damp wood. Cold touched my hands as I rested them on the wheel. The fog seemed alive, curling around the car like slow fingers. The figure reappeared briefly. A shadow of a person taller than I expected. The lantern brightened for a moment. Then gone. I realized the path was not mine. Every bend and dip felt unfamiliar. Yet the lantern waited, patient, guiding. My heart slowed, eyes on the light, every sense alert. Every shadow whispered at the edges of vision. The fog thickened. I smelled wet leaves, iron, earth. The lantern glowed brighter through the mist, steady, unwavering. I could feel the figure behind the light, watching me, but unseen. Its presence lingered, weightless, patient. I followed it for miles. No sign of the world I knew, only the road, the fog, and the pale glow. It led me somewhere I could not name. And when the lantern finally vanished, the fog remained. The road stretched on, unfamiliar and quiet, and I knew I had been guided. By something unseen, waiting, always waiting. The road narrowed into shadow. A hollowed-out tree line stretched along the edge. The fog pressed low, curling through branches like slow fingers. I stopped the car. Headlights barely cut through the gloom. The air smelled damp, earthy, with the faint tang of decay. Then I heard it. My name. Soft, distant, carried on silence. Leaves brushed against the window. No wind, no movement beyond the trees. The whisper returned. Clearer this time, urgent, accusing. I pressed my palms against the wheel. Cold metal, fingers trembling. Breath shallow in the still night. The shadows in the hollow seemed to shift. Thicker than they should be. Curving toward me. Stretching over the asphalt, the whispers multiplied. Layered voices, all saying the same thing. All naming me. I looked out the window. Nothing visible. Only the fog, pale and curling around trunks. Branches twisted, almost reaching. A hum rose beneath my feet. Subtle, vibrating through the car. The voices overlaid it. Soft, insistent. I touched the door handle. Cold, rough metal biting my fingers. Leaves brushed again, closer. Faint footsteps echoed in the hollow, though no one was there. I wanted to leave. The road behind me was obscured by mist. The path ahead, unfamiliar. And the voices followed, patient, waiting. A shadow flickered in the corner of the windshield. Gone when I blinked. Yet the sensation of being watched pressed against my skin. Heavy, impossible to ignore. The fog thickened. Branches scraped lightly along the roof, then retreated. The hum deepened, pulsing like a heartbeat. Every whisper threaded into it. I tried to calm myself. Breath slow, eyes fixed on the hollow. But the voices swelled, layering, circling me. Something moved behind the trees. slender, indistinct, watching. I could not see it clearly, yet it was there. Leaves brushed the window again. Still no wind. Still no one visible. I felt trespassing. I rolled the window up. Cold sealed against the glass. The whispers softened, then lingered. A warning. A reminder. I started the engine slowly. The hollow receded into the fog. The branches curved back into darkness, but the voices remained. Soft, patient, almost inside my own head. Calling, watching, waiting. And when the road finally opened again, the hollow faded. Yet the feeling did not. I drove on alone, marked, remembered. The road stretched empty, black beneath the moon. Fog clung to the asphalt, soft and cold. The air smelled faintly of wet tar and distant smoke. Then it appeared. A gas station. Bright, too bright, sudden in the darkness. 24 hours, the sign said. Flickering, humming softly, I parked. The engine hummed, then went silent. The air inside the car felt thick, heavy. I stepped out. Cold cement pressed under my shoes. The night smelled faintly metallic, sharp. The pumps, frozen, gas mid-flow. No hiss, no movement. Time seemed to have stopped. Inside, the clerk stood still. Eyes wide, pale, empty, no words. Only the soft flicker of fluorescent lights overhead. I moved closer. The floor smelled faintly of coffee, dust, and old paper. Every step echoed against shelves lined with cans and bottles, all untouched. The hum of the night outside seemed distant. Only the frozen pumps, only the clerk's cold gaze. I tried to speak. My voice felt heavy, thick. No reply, only silence. Only eyes that seemed to follow me. Patient, unwavering. The fluorescent lights flickered again. Shadows stretched along the walls. I could feel the stillness pressing against me. I touched the counter. Cold, smooth, no vibration. No life. A bottle rattled slightly on a shelf. I spun. Nothing moved. Yet the feeling of being observed lingered, weightless and close. I stepped back outside. The fog had thickened. The frozen pumps gleamed under pale light. No one else. No sound but my own breath. I realized this place was not normal. Time had stopped, and I was the only thing moving. I walked along the pumps, cold metal beneath my fingers. The air smelled faintly of gasoline, sharp and bitter. The lights hummed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. I climbed back into the car. Doors closed with a soft click. Engine hummed alive, yet outside. Stillness remained. The gas station faded behind me as I drove. Fog swallowed it slowly. Yet the memory lingered. The frozen pumps, the clerk's eyes, the feeling that time itself had paused, waiting. The road narrowed beneath the moon. Fog hung low, curling around the trees. The air smelled damp like earth and fallen leaves. I drove slowly. Headlights cut through mist, revealing stone after stone. Gravestones, old and crooked, leaning as if tired. I blinked. And one shifted. A small movement. Then another. Each time I looked again, the rows had subtly changed. Faint figures rose among them. Slender, pale, dissolving before I could focus. Eyes, if they had them, vanished as soon as I tried to see. The air grew heavier. Whispers threaded between the stones, low and lingering. I swallowed. The taste of damp soil thick on my tongue. Branches scraped the car roof lightly. Not wind. Something else moving above the fog. A shadow stretched across the road. I could not tell if it belonged to a tree or to one of the figures. It flickered with every blink, folding into the mist. The hum of the tires over cracked asphalt was distant. The whispers rose, layered, persistent. I could almost feel them brushing against my skin. I slowed. Cold metal under my hands, fog curling over the hood like slow, soft fingers. A gravestone leaned further. Another seemed to rise slightly. I blinked. Gone. Yet the sense of being watched remained. The figures reappeared briefly, fading in and out like smoke. Not threatening, but insistent. Silent, patient. I smelled damp earth, mold, and a faint metallic tang. Each breath tasted thick, heavy with the weight of the cemetery. Leaves rustled lightly along the edges of the road. No wind. I felt my pulse in my chest, loud and insistent. Each step of the tires echoed strangely. The road curved differently than I remembered. A shadow crossed the headlights, low and deliberate. I blinked. Nothing. Yet the air hummed with quiet intention. I pressed forward slowly. Every gravestone seemed to shift slightly with each glance. Whispers hovered at the edge of hearing. I could not distinguish voices. Only the presence behind them. The fog thickened. Figures dissolved completely. But the scent of damp soil lingered heavy and sharp. The whispers faded. But the feeling did not. I drove past the last stones. The road stretched on, quiet, empty. The cemetery receded behind me. But its weight lingered. Eyes, whispers, shadows, all watching still. The highway stretched empty, fog pressing against the asphalt like a soft curtain. Cold air seeped through the cracks of the car doors. The night smelled faintly of wet tar and damp leaves. I saw a figure ahead, standing still, pale in the fog, lonely, waiting. I slowed. The tires hummed beneath me. Every breath felt loud, heavy, echoing inside the car. When I blinked, they were gone. Nothing but fog. Nothing but the pale reflection of headlights in mist. I stopped. The road was silent. Too silent. Then I saw them, or rather, the trace they left. Wet footprints on the asphalt glistening faintly in the headlights. No one there. Only the imprint. The emptiness felt alive. Shadows shifted at the edges of the fog. Leaves rustled, though the air was still. I stepped out. Cold pressed against my skin. The smell of wet earth mixed with asphalt. The footprints led nowhere. I followed them with my eyes. The fog thickened. Shadows stretched. A hum rose, almost imperceptible, vibrating through the ground. I could feel it watching. Not just the footprints, something beyond, patient, waiting. The figure reappeared briefly. Just for a moment, pale against the gray. No face visible, and gone again before I could react. I pressed my hands to the car roof. Cold metal. Shivering fingers. Breath shallow. The footprints glistened faintly, almost moving in the fog. Every instinct told me to leave, yet I felt drawn, compelled to watch. The fog curled around the tires like slow fingers. Branches scraped lightly against the car. No wind. No movement beyond the quiet of the road. I rolled up the windows. The presence lingered outside, patient, waiting. Eyes unseen. Breath I could not hear. I started the engine. Tires hummed, tires kissed asphalt. The footprints stayed behind, glistening and cold. The figure vanished. The fog swallowed the road ahead. Yet the memory remained. The weight of being watched. The quiet promise of someone or something still waiting. The forest pressed close. Pine needles rustled beneath my tires. The air smelled of damp wood, resin, and moss. A small cabin appeared between the trees. Dark, narrow, tucked into shadows. The porch sagged slightly, the wood groaning under unseen weight. The door creaked. Slowly. As if inviting me in, I stepped closer. Cold air brushed my face. The smell of old wood and smoke drifted out. No flames, no fire. I pushed the door gently. It opened wider. Inside, dim light pooled across worn floorboards. Objects shifted subtly when I looked away. A chair moved a little closer to the wall. A table seemed to tilt, rearranging itself. I blinked. Nothing appeared out of place when I looked directly. The air felt heavy. A soft hum lingered beneath the floorboards. My breath tasted faintly of dust and pine. I ran my fingers along the counter. Cold, rough, smooth where the wood had worn. Shadows stretched against the walls. The silence pressed against me, patient, waiting. I tried to focus. Everything seemed ordinary, yet wrong. The light flickered slightly. The air vibrated faintly as if the cabin were breathing. I stepped back. The door shifted in the frame. Creaked again. Softly, insistently, I left. Cold air hit my face. The tires crunched on pine needles. Branches scraped gently against the car. The cabin remained in my mind. Its door slightly open. Objects shifting. The faint hum lingering. I drove on. The forest swallowed the path. Yet the feeling stayed. The presence of the cabin followed me, patient, weightless. I glanced in the rear view. No lights, no cabin. Only fog and shadow, but I could feel it. In the silence behind my eyes, waiting, always waiting. The highway stretched ahead, dark and endless. Fog pressed against the edges, curling across the asphalt. The air smelled damp, earthy and faintly metallic. I drove slowly. Headlights cut shallow beams into the mist, yet the light felt thin, insufficient. Then I saw them, dark silhouettes leaning along the roadside, still, silent. I blinked. They shifted, moved, mimicked me exactly. Every turn of the wheel, every shift of my weight exactly mirrored. Yet no one was there. The tires hummed over the cracked asphalt. I could feel the cold through the steering wheel. Branches scraped faintly along the roof. No wind. The silhouettes followed, stretching, bending, dissolving into fog. Each blink brought a new position. The air pulsed with quiet intent. I pressed my hands to the wheel. Cold metal, slick with sweat, breath shallow, heart heavy. The fog thickened. I could smell damp leaves and wet soil pressing close. The silhouettes twisted, almost leaning toward the car. I dared not blink. Yet when I did, they were there again. Soft, patient, mocking, the road curved ahead. The dark shapes flowed with me, stretching longer, thinner, indistinct. No sound but my own tires. I tried to look away. The silhouettes still mirrored me. Every movement repeated. Every pause duplicated. I slowed. The fog pressed thicker against the headlights. Shadows curled at the edges of the road. The silhouettes wavered, almost alive, almost aware. I rolled up the window. Cold pressed against the glass. The smell of damp wood, leaves, and earth filled the car. The shadows lingered outside, patient, weightless. I drove on. The figures faded, dissolving into mist. Yet the feeling remained. Eyes that followed, movements that mirrored. The road too dark, too alive. Even as I left that stretch behind, the headlights felt thin. The dark lingered in my mind, waiting, patient. The street was empty. Fog lingered low, pressing against the asphalt. The air smelled faintly of rain, wet concrete, and dust. The radio crackled. Old Warn carried through the dashboard. A low, distorted voice counted. 10. The streetlight flickered above. Soft hum of electricity. The number matched the pulse of light. 9. I could feel it in my chest. A vibration, faint but insistent. Every blink of the light synced with the countdown. 8. Cold pressed against my skin. The air smelled of ozone and damp metal. Each number echoed like a step behind me. The fog thickened. Shadows stretched from the edges of the pavement. The radio hissed between numbers. Soft static layered over the voice. 7. The light above flickered violently. My breath tasted faintly of dust and fear. The hum rose beneath the tires, vibrating through the car. 6. I pressed my hands to the wheel. Cold, slick with sweat. The headlights cut thin lines through the mist. 5. Branches scraped gently against the roof. Leaves brushed the windows. No wind. 4. The numbers synced with every flicker. The feeling of anticipation pressed into the air. Something patient, unseen, waiting. 3. Shadows curled along the roadside. The hum deepened, vibrating softly through my chest. The radio hissed, voice distorted. Patient. 2. I swallowed. The taste of wet earth, ozone, and fear heavy on my tongue. Every blink of the streetlight mirrored the countdown. 1. The light pulsed once, brighter than before. The hum stopped. Silence pressed into the fog. I exhaled slowly. The radio crackled, then went silent. The street remained empty, mist curling over asphalt. Yet the feeling did not fade. The countdown lingered in my chest. The flickering light burned behind my eyes. Something unseen had measured time. And waited. Fog pressed against the road, thick and damp. The night smelled of wet earth and cold metal. The tires hummed quietly against asphalt, muffled by mist. Then I saw them, 2 pale eyes, glowing softly in the distance. No shape, no body. I froze. Cold pressed against my hands on the wheel, breath shallow. Every instinct screamed to look away, yet my eyes would not obey. The fog curled around the headlights. Mist drifted between me and the eyes. They stayed, patient, unwavering, studying. A hum rose beneath the tires, soft, constant, almost a heartbeat in the fog. I tried to blink. The eyes did not move. They glowed, unblinking, observing. The air thickened, moist, heavy. The smell of damp leaves pressed into the car. My heart thudded. Every beat loud, echoing. Branches scraped the roof lightly. Not wind, Soft footsteps or perhaps a shadow brushing along the edges of the fog. I wanted to drive, to escape. But the body refused, frozen, eyes locked in place with the pale light. I tasted metal and fear on my tongue. The fog seemed alive, curling closer. Shadows stretched toward me, patient, quiet. The eyes blinked, or perhaps it was me. A slow, deliberate rhythm. I could feel them probing, waiting. The road behind me disappeared into gray. No light, no form, only the fog and the eyes. Cold pressed through the steering wheel. The tires hummed beneath me, restless. I finally moved. Slow, careful. Eyes still watching. Every inch measured, the distance between us stretched. Yet their gaze lingered. The fog swallowed the shape of the road. The eyes remained, floating, silent, intent. Even as the highway curved away, I could feel them in the mind, patient, studying, waiting. The road narrowed as it met the rails. Fog clung to the trees, curling low over the tracks. The air smelled of damp wood and rust, sharp and heavy. The crossing lights flashed, red and white, steady and insistent. No train approached. No rumble in the distance. I stopped. The tires hummed faintly over cracked asphalt. Branches scraped softly against the car. The fog pressed closer, thick and patient. A whisper drifted across the tracks, soft, almost a sigh. Then another. I could not place a source. No one was there. The signals continued their rhythm. Click, flash, click, flash. The hum beneath the rails vibrated faintly through the air. Time felt stretched, slow, as if the world had paused. I stepped out. Cold air pressed against my skin. The taste of wet metal lingered on my tongue. Each footstep sounded louder than it should, echoing over the ties. The whispers grew, layered and patient, names half-formed, brushing the edge of hearing. The fog shifted around the tracks, curling like fingers, pulling me inward. I looked down the rails. Shadows stretched, flickering. Old worn ties seemed newer, polished. Rails glimmered wet yet untouched. I felt as though I had trespassed into another time, a place where the crossing was alive, where voices belonged to another age. The air itself vibrated with presence. The crossing lights flashed again, insistent, almost urgent. The whispers pressed closer, circling my ears. I stepped back to the car. Cold metal under my hands, breath shallow, heart heavy. The fog twisted across the road, soft and unyielding. The whispers faded slightly. The lights continued to flash. No train approached. No one was there. I drove on slowly. The crossing receded behind me. The fog lingered, curling along the tires. The sensation remained. The weight of a place waiting, patient. Time stretched thin across the rails. Even as the trees swallowed the road, I could feel the echoes, soft voices lingering, the old crossing alive in the mind. The road shimmered with rain. Puddles caught the faint glow of the pale streetlights. The air smelled damp, earthy, metallic. I stopped. Headlights cut shallow beams across the asphalt. A single puddle reflected me. At first ordinary still, then it moved. Not with me. But after me, a heartbeat delayed. A fraction behind, I stared. The reflection's head tilted slowly. A smile stretched across its face. Slow, deliberate, unnatural. I swallowed. The taste of wet asphalt and fear lingered on my tongue. Cold pressed through the steering wheel. The fog curled along the edge of the puddle. I lifted a hand. The reflection did too, but later. The fingers lingering in a crooked imitation, I blinked. It grinned wider. The darkness behind the smile pressed into the edges of the reflection. No warmth, no life. The hum of tires against wet asphalt vibrated faintly. Branches scraped gently along the car. Leaves rustled, though no wind moved. I leaned closer to the puddle. The reflection leaned slower. It watched me. Patient. Alive in its own way. A soft shiver ran down my spine. The puddle rippled lightly. Not from rain. From movement beneath the surface. The reflection stepped sideways. I did not. The smile widened. Fingers stretched unnaturally. Then it vanished. The puddle returned to stillness. Only faint ripples remained. The air smelled of wet earth and something darker, metallic and cold. My breath came heavy, uneven. I dared not move. The road stretched on, empty. Fog curled along the asphalt like pale fingers. The reflection's presence lingered in my mind. Even as I drove on slowly, the puddle stayed with me, in the shape of a memory. A lagging smile, patient, waiting. The road twisted upward, gravel crunching softly beneath the tires. Fog pressed close to the trees, damp and cold. The air smelled of wet pine and earth, heavy with silence. A faint light pulsed atop the ridge, slow, deliberate, like a heartbeat far away. I stopped watching. The fog seemed to thicken around it. Each pulse echoed in the chest. I stepped out. Cold bit through my jacket. The tires hummed faintly beneath me, soft, grounding, soft rustling from the ridge, leaves brushing against each other, though no wind moved. Then a muffled scream, faint, distant, carried by the fog. No form, no one visible. I climbed slowly. Every step sank slightly into damp earth. The fog swirled around my legs, thick and clinging. Breath came uneven, visible in the pale light. The pulsing light drew closer with each step. It cast shadows that twisted unnaturally. I felt watched, measured. Another muffled scream. Closer now. The ridge itself seemed alive, breathing. The hum of the fog pressing against the air, vibrating faintly. I reached a small clearing. The light pulsed gently atop a weathered post. No wires, no source, just the glow. The air smelled of ozone and damp wood. I could hear whispers now. Not words, just fragments, distorted. The screams mingled with them, echoing softly across the ridge. I wanted to step back, but my feet felt rooted, patient, reluctant. Shadows curved at the edges of the fog. The light pulsed again, brighter. A chill ran across my shoulders. The screams and whispers faded into silence, leaving only the hum of anticipation. I turned slowly. The fog had thickened behind me, curling like fingers along the ridge, reaching patient quiet. The light pulsed once more, then dimmed slightly. The ridge waited. I exhaled slowly, feeling the presence of something unseen linger, even as I stepped back toward the car. The night was quiet. Trees leaned close to the road, their branches heavy with dew. The asphalt gleamed faintly in the pale moonlight. I approached the familiar turn, the one I had taken hundreds of times, but it was gone. Nothing curved left. The road stretched straight ahead into blackness. The fog thickened suddenly. It clung to the edges of the pavement, swallowed the lines of the road. A cold, damp weight pressed against my chest. I slowed. The tires hummed softly over the wet asphalt. Leaves rustled in the unseen wind. Shadows curled at the edges of the trees. The black void ahead seemed to pulse, a subtle, patient rhythm. My hands tightened on the wheel. A shiver ran up my arms. I tried to turn again. Nothing. The curve did not exist. The road did not bend. Panic rose quietly in my chest, slow but insistent. I blinked. The void shifted slightly, as if alive. Edges of the fog twisted like fingers curling toward me. The air smelled damp, metallic, and faintly of smoke. Each breath felt heavy, pressed against by the fog. The tires hummed again, higher now, vibrating through the car. I could feel the weight of the road stretching on endlessly. Familiar landmarks were gone. Gone. I slowed further. The headlights barely touched the blackness. Shadows moved in the fog. Not fast. Patient, watching. The road beneath seemed solid, but untrustworthy. My mind faltered. Direction faltered. Time seemed to stretch. I exhaled slowly. A soft, steady sound grounding me, but the void remained. The turn I had always known did not return, only the black stretch ahead, waiting. The fog whispered along the edges of the car. Cold touched my neck, damp against my skin. The road seemed to breathe beneath the tires. I pressed forward cautiously. The void did not break. The world felt thin here, edges of reality fragile. Even as I drove on, the vanishing turn lingered in my mind. A place that should have existed, a path familiar, but swallowed, patient, waiting. The road stretched empty beneath a pale, slanted moon. Mist clung to the trees and asphalt. The air smelled faintly of wet metal and cold earth. I drove slowly, tires humming softly against the damp road. The night was silent. Too silent. Ahead, an old highway sign leaned slightly, rusted. Its paint flaked in the dim light. But as I drew near, it seemed to hum softly, a vibration through the air. The words on the sign murmured, unintelligible low, each syllable curling into my mind, soft, patient, echoing long after I passed. I blinked. The fog twisted around the sign. Shadows pooled beneath the posts. The letters shifted subtly, as if alive. The tires whispered over gravel. Leaves rustled at the edge of the road. A faint chill pressed against my skin. I realized the emptiness around me felt watching. I passed the sign. Its hum lingered, echoed inside my chest. I glanced back. The post leaned further, but the words had gone silent. Still, the murmurs remained, soft crawling in my ears, a rhythm, slow, patient, like breathing. The road stretched endlessly. Black, empty, sentient. The air tasted damp. Every exhale clouded in pale mist. I felt the sign's presence stretching along the asphalt, following me, patiently. A shadow flickered in the fog. Not sharp, not distinct, but enough to make the pulse quicken. The whispers softened, then sharpened again. Names, numbers, fragments. I slowed. Breath shallow. The emptiness around me shifted slightly. I could feel it lean closer. Silent but aware. The sign disappeared behind me. Yet the words lingered, echoing in the folds of my mind, faint vibrations through the car frame. A presence I couldn't name. The fog pressed closer, curled around the tires, around the car. Even the soft hum of the engine felt intrusive. I was alone. Yet not alone, I drove on. The whispers never fully faded. Each mile stretched longer. The emptiness around me, alive, waiting. The night was still, thick with mist. I pulled into the small roadside gas station. Lights flickered weakly above the pumps. The air smelled faintly of gasoline and damp concrete. Inside, the station was silent. The floor creaked softly under my feet. Empty aisles stretched out, pale under flickering fluorescent bulbs. I felt the quiet hum in my chest. A presence I couldn't name. The mirror above the counter caught my reflection. But it wasn't just me. Figures stood behind me, silent, motionless. I froze. The air seemed colder there, closer to the glass. I blinked, thinking they would vanish. But each time I looked, they edged closer. A step here, a tilt of the head there. They were strangers, faces I didn't know. Yet they felt aware of me, watching, patient. The tiles beneath my shoes felt slick. A faint hum ran through the fluorescent lights. The mirror's surface seemed slightly warped. The edges of the reflection shimmered like heat over asphalt. I tried to focus on the floor, on the dusty shelves, but the figures persisted. Each glance revealed them nearer, closer, almost reaching out. A cup rattled on the counter. Not from wind, there was none. I could hear my breath in the silent space, each inhale sharp, trembling. The reflection whispered movement. Not sound I could catch, just sensation. A shift behind me, a pause, then closer again. The mirror seemed endless. The figures multiplying, overlapping. Their eyes pale, fixed. Empty yet aware. I backed toward the door. The tiles underfoot sticky with old coffee, gasoline. The pump lights flickered and hummed. The air thickened with the smell of damp metal. I couldn't tear my gaze from the glass. A shadow moved at the edge of the reflection. Slower than me. Deliberate. A smile that was too wide, too still. I turned sharply. The station behind me empty. Only my own reflection stared back. But in the mirror, they remained. Closer. Silent. I fled outside. The night air sharp in my lungs. Mist curling around my shoes and tires. The pump stood frozen mid-flow, quiet as a tomb. The mirror glimmered faintly through the glass, pale and impossible. I drove off slowly, the hum of the engine louder than the world itself. Every glance in the rear view hinted at their forms lingering, near, patient, watching. The gas station disappeared behind the fog, but in my mind the mirror remained, and the silent figures never left. The highway stretched empty, wet asphalt glinting under pale streetlights. Fog curled low across the lanes, thick and soft, swallowing the edges of the world. I slowed as the overpass loomed above, concrete gray and shadowed. A faint echo of steps met me before I even passed beneath, soft, deliberate, above the roadway where no one should be. I tilted my head, listening. Silence followed, heavy, almost patient. Shadows darted at the edges of my vision, gone before I could focus, rustling against the guardrails. A flicker in the mist. I felt the hum of the tires over wet concrete, a low vibration through the car's frame. Breath shallow, sticky in the cold air. The footsteps returned, irregular now, pausing, then fading. Every time I blinked, they seemed nearer, and yet nothing crossed the overpass above. I glanced to the shoulder. Mist swirled around concrete pillars, pale light glancing off edges. Shadows moved in sync with the car, mimicking, waiting. The smell of damp stone and gasoline hung heavy. I could feel it in my chest, thick as fog. A soft tapping echoed above me. Slow, deliberate, but I saw no one. A whisper of motion at the corner of my eye. A dark shape, just a suggestion, disappeared into the mist. I blinked, heart tightening. The overpass stretched on, empty, silent. I tried to focus ahead, the road unbroken, wet, reflective. But the shadows clung at the edges, flitting, waiting. Soft footsteps in the distance, matching the rhythm of my own pulse. I held the wheel tighter, fingers cold, sweat clinging to skin. The mist thickened, brushing against the windshield. Every curve of the concrete seemed alive. The echoes above grew louder. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady my heartbeat. The steps stopped abruptly. Only the hum of tires over asphalt remained. The fog seemed to swallow the overpass entirely, leaving nothing but gray silence, a sudden shift in the shadows. They moved closer, then scattered, teasing and vanishing. I felt eyes tracing me, from above, from the corners of the overpass, from somewhere the fog couldn't reach. I kept driving. The overpass receded into the mist behind me. Silence settled. The road ahead empty, cold, but the memory lingered. Steps that never had a source, shadows that mimicked, teasing, and the faint, eerie sensation of being watched from every angle. Alone, yet never truly alone. The road narrowed, flanked by tall, skeletal trees. Fog clung to the ground like damp cloth. Night pressed in from all sides, silent, expectant. A sudden gust swept across the hollow. Leaves rustled sharply, brushing against the car windows. The wind carried a whisper, faint, fragmented, almost human. I froze. The air tasted cold, sharp with the scent of wet earth. A low hum vibrated through the tires over cracked asphalt. The whisper returned, threading around my thoughts. A name, or something that sounded like one. Shadows twisted in the fog. The leaves spun, coiling into shapes that almost resembled a figure. I blinked. It dissolved before my eyes, leaving only the hollow and the wind. My breath caught. It felt like the gust was conscious, aware of me. Every rustle, every sigh of air seemed deliberate. The fog thickened, curling around the trees like pale fingers. A branch scraped the roof. I flinched, chest tight, heart thudding. The whisper followed, moving with the sway of the trees. It wasn't wind anymore. It was something alive, patient, watching. I tried to look away. The hollow seemed to shift subtly, elongating shadows, bending the fog. Each inhale felt drawn into the wind. Each exhale trembled in my lungs. A swirl of leaves formed again, taller this time. Almost human, almost still. I pressed my hands to the wheel. Cold sweat clung to my skin. The hum of the tires seemed distant, muffled, swallowed by the hollow. The whispering grew louder, almost forming words. I wanted to turn away, but my body froze. The figure of leaves shifted closer, then dissipated into the mist. A soft, lingering rustle remained, like a breath against my ear. I blinked. Silence returned. Only the hollow and the fog, thick and oppressive. The road stretched ahead, empty yet full of unseen presence. I exhaled slowly. The wind calmed, gentle now, teasing at my hair and the collar of my jacket. But the memory of its weight remained. The hollow had its eyes on me, though no eyes existed. I kept driving. Leaves brushed the car in fleeting caresses. The whisper followed only in memory, fading slowly as I moved away. But the sensation lingered. Alone, but not alone. The hollow waited. And the wind! The wind would never forget me. The night stretched on unbroken, cold and empty. Fog settled low, curling along the edges of the road. My tires hummed over cracked asphalt, steady but hollow, then headlights, bright and close suddenly behind me. The glare cut through the mist, white and insistent. I pressed a little harder on the brake. The car followed, its light relentless, brushing my rearview mirror. I glanced once, too quick, and the shape seemed impossibly close. Breath caught. The air inside the car grew thick, heavy. I could smell damp leaves, the chill of the night, and something faint, metallic, like old wires. A shiver crawled up my spine. I slowed to a stop. The headlights behind me vanished. Completely. The fog swallowed them whole. Silence pressed against the windows. Even the tires seemed hushed, as if the road itself held its breath. I checked the mirrors. Nothing. Not a trace. No reflection of headlights. Just the curve of the road, dark and infinite. My pulse thundered in my ears. Each beat echoed, loud against the quiet of the night. The stillness felt deliberate. Watching, aware, a rustle. Something shifted in the fog, far to the side. Shadow, maybe, or the mind playing tricks. The air felt thicker there, colder, as if the darkness itself had weight. I started moving again, slowly. The road seemed longer now, stretching farther than it should. The hum of tires returned, muted and uneven. Every breath tasted faintly of ozone, of something electric, unseen. The headlights returned briefly in a flash of distance, then gone. Again and again, the pattern repeated in my mind's eye, though nothing appeared on the road. It was testing me, measuring how far I would go. My hands gripped the wheel tighter. The fog swirled, hiding and revealing the pavement in impossible ways. A tree leaned close, its shadow long and sharp before vanishing into gray. Every turn, every movement felt anticipated. I blinked. For a moment, I thought I saw the faint glint of chrome behind me. Or maybe it was the reflection of my own headlights in a puddle. Either way, it vanished before I could be sure, alone, yet followed. The night seemed alive, sentient. Every shadow carried weight. Every flicker of light suggested presence. Every heartbeat reminded me I was still here, still moving, still caught in its gaze. I drove on, slower now, listening to the whisper of tires on wet asphalt. The fog thinned slightly, but the road still felt wrong, stretched, unending. The headlights never returned. Yet I knew they had been there, and that they might be waiting. By the time the hollow cleared into faint moonlight, my pulse had slowed. The road returned to emptiness. The fog dissipated like a breath exhaled too long. But the memory of the bright vanishing lights lingered, alone, yet watched. And the night would not let go. The road was quiet, empty, stretching under a pale light that barely cut through the fog. My tires hummed against the damp asphalt. The air smelled faintly of wet leaves and cold metal. I glanced in the rearview mirror. At first, nothing. Then a figure, not in the seat behind me, not in the reflection of anything else, just there. It faded in and out, a shadow breathing with me. I could feel it pacing, matching every curve, every slight adjustment of the wheel. Its presence was a weight in the back of my eyes. I blinked. It vanished. For a heartbeat, I was alone. Then it returned, a dark shape impossible to define, yet familiar in its motion. My breath caught. The chill of the night pressed against my skin, sharp as knives. The hum of tires on asphalt felt louder, almost anxious, like the road knew. I tried to convince myself it was a trick. Fog, shadows, fatigue. But shadows don't move like people. Shadows don't follow so deliberately. The figure drifted closer with every glance. Every time I turned my eyes to the mirror, it would shift, just out of reach, but always there. I could see a pale suggestion of a face, or maybe I imagined it. The mind scrambles when fear is quiet and patient. I felt the pulse in my throat. Each beat synchronized with the small flicker of my headlights in the wet asphalt. I imagined its presence touching the air behind me, brushing my hair, grazing the nape of my neck. The fog thickened. Edges of the road blurred into gray. The world felt condensed into that mirror. The figure patient, silent, unyielding. I tried to speak, whispering my own name. No sound left my lips, just breath that tasted faintly of cold iron. Even the car seemed quiet, as if holding its own breath, waiting. I blinked again. It vanished. For a second, I could see the empty back seat, the empty road behind me, and then it reappeared. Closer now, more defined, though still impossible. I could sense its intent, watching, matching every turn. A weight settled in my chest. A hum vibrated in the air, soft, almost musical, but wrong. The rear view reflected everything except reality. Trees blurred into gray streaks. Fog swallowed the line of the road. And still, the figure kept pace. I felt its gaze, patient, precise. It didn't move forward. It didn't need to. I moved, and it mirrored me perfectly. I tried looking away. I tried focusing on the road, but every peripheral glance drew it closer, lingering longer. A faint coldness brushed my shoulder, or maybe I imagined it. The air felt dense, thickening with anticipation. Minutes or hours passed. Time distorted. The hum of tires, the whisper of wind against the car, and the ever-present shadow in the rear view. I was trapped in my own reflection, a captive of motion and stillness at once, and then slowly, almost reluctantly, it began to fade, edges dissolving into the fog. The road returned. The tires hummed normally. The air lost its weight. I was alone. The mirror held only the empty seat behind me. The figure had vanished, but the memory remained. A presence, patient and unseen, always waiting. I drove on, silent. Every shadow in the fog felt like it could step out. Every reflection, a potential threat. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew it would return. Dawn crept over the horizon, pale and thin, washing the highway in soft gray light. The air smelled faintly of wet asphalt and dew-soaked grass. I drove on. The fog had lifted. Yet everything felt wrong. Nothing looked familiar. Every mile stretched the same, flat and endless. I checked the rear view. No footprints, no shadows, no movement. Just the road behind me, yawning into distance. The tires hummed over the asphalt, steady, hypnotic. The hum echoed through the cab, through my chest, through my mind. The horizon never changed. It never offered a turn, a sign, a landmark. Just road. I blinked. The lines on the pavement flickered. The trees at the edges shifted ever so slightly, as if breathing. I realized I might have been driving forever. Alone. Truly alone. The emptiness pressed in on all sides, quiet, patient. Even the wind felt hesitant, brushing against the car only in passing whispers. I tried remembering where I had started. A town, a gas station, a turn in the road. The memory wavered. I felt time stretch, fold, fracture. Hours, days, maybe years, all compressed into this endless stretch. The sun climbed, turning the gray light to something warmer. Yet warmth didn't bring comfort. The road didn't end. The horizon remained unbroken, distant and indifferent. I slowed. The hum of the tires softened to a static murmur. My pulse thudded in rhythm with it. Even the air felt thicker, pressing against my skin, heavy with acceptance I hadn't asked for. The trees leaned closer. Or perhaps I leaned too far into their shapes. Shadows lingered, not sharp, not defined, but alive in the corner of my vision. I blinked. They were gone. The smell of wet earth reached me in waves, cold and real. It anchored me for a moment, the only proof of the world outside my mind. But the proof didn't help. It only made the emptiness more tangible, more permanent. I let the wheel rest lightly in my hands. No more searching for exits, no more hoping for familiar landmarks. The road was all there was. The horizon all that existed, soft rustling in the tree line. A crow called somewhere distant, static in the air. I could feel it humming around me, waiting, watching, patient. And I understood. This was not a highway to anywhere. It was a place of being. A stretch of time folded into itself, measured only by the hum of tires and the rise of the sun. I breathed slowly, tasting the cold air, feeling the subtle vibrations through the wheel. Alone, yes, but safe. Or as safe as one could be here. The highway never ended. It would never change. And I would keep driving. Forever. The sun climbed higher, light spilling over the gray asphalt. I let my gaze soften, the hum settle into my chest. Acceptance settled too, quiet and heavy. No fear. No hope. Just the road and me. Alone moving forward.